Rock Solid Radio wants to thank Maxwell Construction, who has been our sponsor since the very beginning. For over 30 years, Maxwell has delivered the highest quality projects by holding to their core values of customer satisfaction, positive attitude, respect, and excellence. So if you have any kind of commercial construction need, give Maxwell Construction a call today at 812-537-2200.
Welcome to Rock Solid Radio. This is Merle Hutchinson alongside of my my bride of 35 years.
I was going to say 35 years old.
There.
That's good. I'll take it. I'll take it.
Linda Hutchinson, hello. How are you doing today?
It is crazy to think we've been married for over 35 years.
That is crazy. I mean, I've actually... this spring, we will have known each other for 39 years.
Ooh.
We're knocking on the big 4-0.
I know. We don't really want to get into how we met, right?
No. That's
we call that BC.
That's a different show.
Before Christ.
Yeah.
Now, honestly, we can give the G-rated version. Like, we met on college spring break, right?
Yeah.
Through mutual friends. Well, we did.
Yeah.
Why are you pausing like that? Like we got some deep, dark secret to tell.
You might say, what were you doing on spring break? And that's when it gets to be, we were typical college kids on spring break doing what probably most of your parents say, I hope you never did that.
I was with some girls, you were with some guys, and my friend of a friend was dating your friend of a friend. Mm-hmm. And so you guys ran out of money.
And so we had to sponge off of the girls that we just met on the beach. And so, yeah. Anyway, that's kind of that story. But, man, yeah, so 35 years. Do you ever think you make it that long?
It is hard because your parents, got divorced after 30-something years. Mm-hmm. And so never say never, yep. And
I didn't think I'd make 6 months. I had made 6 months prior to meeting you.
I do remember when I broke that record, because people had warned me, family and friends, Merle's afraid of commitment.
I wouldn't use the word afraid.
What would you say then?
I would say I was very busy with other things.
You were afraid of commitment.
Well, you had
never dated a girl more than 6 months.
I thought of marriage as a big deal, and I always thought of the word love as a big deal. Like, I used to know people who would throw love around like it was just water, mm-hmm. and I did not throw that word around with girls that I dated or people in general. Mm-hmm. Like, oh, I love you. If I got to the point of using that word, it was a big deal.
Yeah, and I appreciate that.
And I think that same way about marriage. I needed to be really secure and is this because I didn't look at it as any other way but permanent. That's the only way. And are you ready for that?
Yeah.
And so, I also didn't want to waste a lot of time. And I don't say that meaning if I didn't
I'm done with you.
If I didn't think a relationship was going to be, I wasn't going to hang. I wasn't insecure enough to say I've got to have this person in my life. No, listen, we're not this. This isn't winning. Let's just be done. So, I didn't really look at my short-term commitments as being a bad thing. I really felt like it's just better that way.
Yeah. So once I passed the 6 months mark, man, I felt like I was in. That's a perfect lead into our show because we're talking about, are you prepared for marriage? Are you doing the things now if you are a single man or woman, or maybe you are a divorced man or woman? Are you ready for marriage? Are you preparing yourself for that lifelong commitment? Because we do want it to be a lifelong commitment. I don't think anybody goes in with I know this is only going to be for 6 months, I take that back. I've actually had a client or two that went in with the idea, and it didn't work out so well, to get, and in most cases, they had gotten the cart before the horse, so there were children involved, and they literally were doing marriage to get to the custody, to get to the stuff.
They admitted that to
They
you?
did. They did.
I have not had that happen.
In retrospect, I mean,
Yeah.
they will say now, I see that was wrong, but that's why I did it.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah, unfortunately, that is sometimes
Yeah, well,
motive.
there are other motives. Like we've seen everything from somebody trying to get legal citizenship and status and access into money or whatever and security. So yeah, there can be those other motives, but those hopefully those are outliers.
Hun, think about this. We started working with the Archdiocese in our local area when working with premarital couples literally just years after we were married ourselves. We were kind of pulled in as the young couple.
Yeah, we were
right?
the young couple
Yeah.
to show, how
crazy.
And I think it was good though, hun, because one, it made us conscious about our relationship, but two, it was a very good tool in the whole process of that program to show people from the different spectrums. These are newly married people, the struggles. We could bring a different flavor in, like, well, we don't even have kids yet, but here are some of the things. And then we had actually couples on that team that were at different points in their marriage.
So we've been working with premarital couples. And we taught students, so then a lot of times we would see them afterwards and work with them. But we've been working with premarital couples for over 30 years.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And we've been married 35, so it's been a long time.
Yeah. Well, so what we're going to talk about today is that whole premarital, that prep time for marriage. And you might think, well, I'm already married or I'm not interested. Please bear with us in this because you are going to know someone, whether it's going to be your own children or maybe you or a friend of yours. And I think you're going to want to hear some of the different aspects of our show today. And even if it's not for you, this might be the kind of show where you say, I need to share this with so-and-so.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
And so we're going to speak to you very authentically in terms of what we actually see, things that manifest themselves later in the marriage that couples say, I wish I would have known. And so these are the important things that we really want to spend some time on today. But before we do that, we better say thank you to a few sponsors.
Yeah, we want to thank Casey's Outdoor Solutions and Maxwell Construction for their support of Rock Solid Radio, Rock Solid Families, which is the parent company of this podcast. You can get a hold of us through rocksolidfamilies.org. But we appreciate those two community sponsors as well as the flood of families and churches and schools and other nonprofits who really come alongside this ministry. This ministry is all about strengthening the family, strengthening couples, strengthening selves, individuals through God and His Word. And so if this is all new to you and you're just coming across Rock Solid Radio, we really encourage you to check us out at rocksolidfamilies.org, or you can give us a call at 812-576-ROCK. That's 812-576-7625 for more information.
All right. Very good. Well, we spend a large majority of our shows talking about marriage or maybe parenting, but the idea that the unit has already been formed.
Right.
Okay. And we also, though, talk about our office is oftentimes the emergency room where people come in because they're in a bad way and they need help immediately. But we talk about our podcast shows and our writings as being somewhat on the preventative side. Today's show is even more beyond. I mean, it's really kind of amped up the preventative measures. And so that's why we probably should spend a little bit more time on the premarital work because the idea here of, man, if we could help couples before they go in too deep or have built up years and years of problems when really you could have predicted some of this from the get-go even before they said their I do's.
This is one of the laws of boundaries, by the way, the law of proactivity, getting ahead of problems that you can maybe see ahead of time. And that's also one of the steps to success. I think it's, I don't know if it's Zig Ziglar or one of the other, self-help books, like proactivity, looking ahead as to what might happen down the road. And of course, when you're in love and when you're engaged and when, life is bliss and, you're lusting over one another, you're not thinking of those storms that are going to come. But we know that storms hit. And those storms may be things like infertility. Maybe you can't have children. Maybe it's infidelity. Maybe someone steps outside the relationship. Maybe there is financial issues. Maybe there is a health crisis. There are storms that are going to come. And we're not going to be naive to think that you won't have those. So why not storm-proof your relationship?
Yeah, we joke all the time about parents coming in with their children in the school setting, and they say, nobody knows my kid like I do. And so in premarital work, couples come into us, and they believe they know their partner
Everything.
like nobody else.
Yeah.
Like, no, that's why I'm going to marry them. And our only statement to that would be, you know your partner like nobody else in your current situation.
Right.
And so situations, as you're talking about, situations do change. And part of this is boiling down a little bit farther into the person and the relationship and actually looking more about personality, character traits, just the whole fabric that builds that person, because that gives you a little bit more insight. Still doesn't give you all of it. Like you said, hon, I mean, I could have married a person, but all of a sudden 2 years into it, they came up with some illness, some injury that completely changes who they are as a person.
Yeah.
Nobody saw that coming.
Or a secret that was a deal breaker that no one said to you. You know, hon, one of the recent blogs that we did was about one of our premarital couples, Ben and Emily. And it was just such a sweet story because they had been high school sweethearts and they had been engaged for years and they really thought they knew everything, but yet they still were intentional about investing the time and the money and the energy on getting that right as far as strengthening the relationship and really working through getting ahead of some problems. And so I'm so proud of them. And I said in this blog, it's one of the funnest things the most fun things we do, because it is so preventative. It is so proactive. It's getting ahead of the problems. It's not putting out the fires. It's really laying the foundation so there isn't those kind of fires.
And those couples usually come in and they still really like each other.
Yeah.
So they come in, you know, they're dating
laughing
and they're laughing and they're having fun. Oftentimes when we're in the emergency room of our work, they still might even love each other, but they don't always like each other. And so they bring, our premarital couples bring a different energy into those sessions, which is always good, and that's fun. So here's the bottom line in terms of how we think about this. We cannot fireproof 100% your marriage, but what we can do is help you prepare and get the tools to know how you're going to get through some of these unknowns that lie ahead, and maybe uncover some of the unknowns right now and discover, oh, this could be an issue. So our goal in premarital work is to help open your eyes and to help you get the tools. We cannot make guarantees. Nobody can do that in terms of what the future brings. So anyway, no, I got my finger up first.
All right.
And so again, at the end of the day, what we want to do is try to help marriages get started on the right foot, but always knowing that you got to know where to get help. Even down the road if things aren't going well, because your marriage is worth saving.
Yeah. And so we use a program called Prepare and Enrich, and it is an online assessment tool that comes with workbooks and stuff. And then we one-on-one coach couples, and, you know, we help prepare them for the challenges. And one of my favorite parts of that work that we do is something I call myth busting, where we literally kind of debunk some of the myths that young couples in love say to each other and say out loud to others that really are not true. And some of those are things like you mentioned before. I know everything I need to know about my partner.
Right.
That's a myth. Okay. And if you think that, you're in for a really big disappointment.
Right.
Okay. Or the way our relationship now is the way it's going to stay. You don't want it to stay this way. You want it to grow deeper and stronger and that kind of stuff. Something as simple as, you know, if this secret I have would only hurt my partner, it's better that I keep it a secret. That's a big fat lie. Those are myths that we really, really work on debunking if you come in for premarital work.
Most of the time, people come in and they come in with the greatest intentions in their marriage. We don't question that most of the time, right? Most of the time we think people came into the marriage with the right intentions. but right intentions do not guarantee the right tools. And so when we talk about tools, you also have to understand the personality and the background of the person coming in. So, Hun, that's something that you and I still, even our own marriage, we have totally different personalities and approaches for how we go about things.
Right.
And those are it is a difference in personalities that causes the conflicts when you go about things differently. And so you don't change people's personality. You don't change the personality.
You don't go into it trying to either.
Right. And personality doesn't really change unless there's something underlying like a medical issue or something of the sort. But behaviors can change. And so the behavior that only changes from within the person that sees the behavior that you, like you said, you don't change your spouse's behavior. And so when we talk about like prepare, obviously we're taking into account the personalities. And so we're not going to go through that tool completely. But that tool is really pretty powerful because it helps take into account, like, have you guys even considered each other's personalities? And whether you are an avoider of sort or whether you are assertive or not assertive.
Yeah.
You know, all
avoiding,
of these
are you an avoider?
And you might go, oh, yeah, well, I mean, I'm kind of more quiet. Well, I really want to know, well, how does that play into actually getting conflict resolved?
Right. Because especially if one is strong and kind of very assertive and very confident, and then one is very meek and very quiet and very introverted, man, that sometimes that person can power over the other, and it really causes a lot of pain and conflict.
Yeah, and resentment that builds up. And so we might get years into the marriage, and then you have that pile of resentment. And so let's just go through a few different areas just to show our folks out there that are listening where there's some time needed to at least think about how well do you do in these areas?
Yeah, probably the number one area that people come into us and say we need help with, and this is marriage and premarital, and it's because they never got the work done premaritally, and that is communication and conflict resolution. You know, how do we communicate? How do we express our needs and wants with each other? How do we resolve it when we don't agree on those? And that's a huge foundational tool that if you don't get it right early, you're just going to kind of build on sinking sand.
And the communication is not whether somebody's just a quiet person or a vocal person. The communication is how well we learn to communicate the need of our heart, much more internal. The idea that does my partner understand me? We talk about listening skills. Listening skills have only a very little to do with actual listening with your ears. It is so much more. Do you even take the time to actually see what they're communicating? Are they distressed about something? Are they bothered about something? Or are you so much plowing through because you don't even think about how they're feeling? And so the communication thing is a big deal. And oftentimes we think men don't communicate. Men don't communicate the same way women might, but they still have as much to communicate. And so they're just quieter oftentimes. And so when they're quiet, they go, he just doesn't communicate. Well, I guarantee you, if you actually pay attention, he's putting out all kinds of messages.
Yeah. What's the ratio of women's words versus men?
30,000 to 10,000 or something like that.
And so, you know, one of my favorite phrases, and I say this all the time in Prepare, is mean what you say and say what you mean. That we've got to learn assertiveness and speaking what we really need, not what we think our partner should know already. You know, they should already know I need that. If I have to ask, it's not as meaningful. That's one of those myths. You know, like, no, you're going to have to communicate that assertively but respectfully. And so that's a huge part of what we do in Prepare.
Yeah, and there's an area that I think is sometimes kind of funny because you can overlook it early, but it's just the person's, their lifestyle, how they go about.
Neat, sloppy, organized.
Yeah, like these things are things that you can so easily go, well, that's just them. But when you have to live with that person day in and day out, and maybe they're a procrastinator or maybe they're a hard charger all the time, you know, it doesn't matter. It's when they are significant significantly different
Right.
that causes the rub between
Right.
the two of you. And so just their habits of living, their partner, your partner's style will be something that you got to spend some time talking about.
Yeah.
And so sometimes, like, you might say, listen, you are a super type A personality and you're very domineering, and that's awesome in the office. But when you come home, you might have to learn to manage that differently.
Yeah. So when we have them do their assessment tool, there is a personality scale that has like change, organization, that kind of stuff. And so pleasantness, like if you're a kind person or if you're more abrasive. And so it's really about the difference between the two.
Right.
If they're one's high on that, one's low on that, that's when the conflict comes. And so we really do unpack that in a good way, I think.
Most of the time.
Most of the time.
The next one, which this is oftentimes the big elephant in the room, and this is the financial management side of it. You've heard this many times before, but finance or money is one of the biggest things that couples argue or have tension about, and oftentimes to divorce. But the idea here is people knowing the security level that money brings for each. Maybe one says, "Oh, I don't really care. Like it'll all work out," and the other one's like, "Oh no, I need to know I got 10 years of money saved up in case we have some kind of emergency." And so it is these differences that can really wreak havoc within the marriage. And so this is not always like managing money. It may not be something that both of you agree on, but both of you will be impacted by it.
Yeah, for sure. And it's like you said, the meaning of money is really important. Like, is it status to you? Is it control to you? Is it security for you? So we really unpack that in our sessions at Prepare.
Another thing is just like leisure activities. And so guys in general, I will say guys have a harder time dying to some of this, and that is if they're in their 20s and they're doing a lot of their guy stuff, whether it's hunting, fishing, playing softball, whatever. And man, that stuff gives them life, right? It pumps energy into them. And then all of a sudden they start to feel like there's tension. They're going to another softball tournament and their wife's kind of rolling their eyes. And now there's tension between the two of them. And so, like, we're not saying don't play softball. What we're saying is you two come together and get a plan for how you're going to carry these things out.
And especially early on, if I looked at you and said, you're not allowed to do that anymore.
Yeah.
That doesn't always go so well. So it's really finding that balance and communicating what you need, what you want, and how that makes you feel. Be assertive, be respectful. And so we work on all that. Then we get to the issue of sexual intimacy and the expectations. And, what is your experiences? What is your expectations? What is maybe the trauma you have in your past? A lot of people don't realize that some of their negative experiences in their life, whether it be with some kind of molestation or rape or trauma or abuse or something like that, even an old boyfriend can have a huge, or girlfriend could have a huge impact on your current sexual relationship with your spouse. And so we really unpack that on what has been your experience, but also what is your expectations and how do you connect physically, emotionally, spiritually.
Yeah. You talked before about, how do you view money? Well, also you have to talk about how do you view sex? And we know just by the design of male and female that it is completely looked at differently. And if, it's kind of our joke, us guys say, why don't these women think more about sex like us guys do, more on the physical satisfaction? And the women are always like, why don't you understand the emotional connection? But the idea here is you at least have to have some conversation to know how each other views your or sexual experiences and what to expect out of each other. And again, like, we don't say this is right and this is wrong. We want you two to come together and come to an agreement on what is right and what is wrong. And hun, can I just tell you, like, this also needs to be everything. Like, there are so many guys that might see a good-looking other lady walking across the room, and his eyes go and he looks at her. And the guys think nothing of it. I'm not having sex with her. I'm not doing anything with her. But it completely offends their wife, okay? Those conversations need to be had.
Right.
Because if he doesn't think or believe that that offends her, and he continues to do it every day, it's like a little salt in that wound, and that builds up.
Yeah, we have to learn to bounce our eyes and have that healthy boundary around our relationship. And then you get family involved there, and really finding the healthy balance and boundaries with family and friends. And so you can have a couple where maybe one is enmeshed with their parents and like they're all wrapped together and it's hard to even separate the two. And then you maybe have this very disconnected, unchanging kind of inflexible family dynamic that they came from. And so they really don't understand why you'd want to go to your mom's for the holidays. And so it really is something you really have to work through to make sure that you're on a healthy page with that.
I think that's really important. And then understanding that you are creating a new family.
Yes.
And so what will your new family traditions and roles and expectations be? And if they are a little different than what you came up with in your own life, then how are you going to balance that?
Right.
All right. So I think it's really important that you when you leave and cleave, the idea of, what are you going to build?
Right. The man leaves his father and mother and becomes one flesh to his wife. And so that's where the shift in priorities have got to happen, where the wife and this husband kind of bumps up above mom and dad and children, because sometimes we get that cart before the horse, right? So it's like we've got to make sure we prioritize God, and then our spouse, and then children, and then our extended family comes down even below all of that. And so we've got to make sure we put that in the right order.
I think another area too that couples kind of gets messy is the role that each person has in the marriage. And so, we've said since the day that we started helping people, we do not have conversations of 50-50. Everything is 50-50. No, it's 100% to the task of being married, to the task of having a family. But sometimes you do have to identify certain roles and then how that role will be carried out. And it's as simple as, hey, I am going to take care of the security and maintenance of the house. Okay.
That's your job.
And so, okay, like I get that. That's my deal. And then I have to be the guy who kind of oversees that and take direction and give direction, but it's kind of my domain. Mostly you own those things based off of skill set, experience, comfortable understanding of it. And so, those things are worth spending time on versus every Thursday night, we get into an argument about who's taking out the garbage.
Right.
I just walk by the garbage all the time, hoping somebody else will take it out. Why? Like, just identify the role.
What wins for the family, right? It's not, I'm standing at the line and waiting for you to do your half or your part.
Right.
It's what can I do to the win of the family? And so that's, if you're keeping score, whether you're premarital, marriage, if you're keeping score in your marriage relationship or your significant relationship, you're going to lose in your relationship.
If you're keeping score, you've already lost.
You've already lost,
yeah.
And then the last one, obviously, is spiritual beliefs. What is the common faith that you have? Do you have a common faith? Is it even important? Have you had those kind of conversations? That's becoming way down on the totem pole. And honestly, it should be one of the first conversations you have. I had a premarital couple, they were so cute. I just loved working with them. And they had met at a summer camp. And they were both kind of like camp counselors and young adults. And so they met, and on their very first date, this young woman said, "Just to let you know, I'm a virgin. I'm waiting till marriage. And if that's not okay with you, then this is our last date." And he would say later on, "I knew that day I was going to marry her." Because it's like she stood up and she said, and she mentioned God in there too, that I want to honor my relationship to God, and that's priority for me. And so if that's a problem for you, then I know you're not the man for me. And man, that set the tone for the relationship, and it was a beautiful relationship, and it still is. And now they have a little one. And so it's just really kind of awesome to see that God did come first, and God blesses that. And so that's becoming a kind of a minority in our young couples today, is that they value faith and their relationship with God as a priority. And I'm just telling you, that is how you get a rock solid marriage.
Absolutely. It is the number one tool that you will have in understanding in terms of how you resolve all of the other differences and all of the other things we've talked about. Because when you boil it down, we've said this many times, if your opinion is the thing that you're using to determine whether something's right or wrong or how it ought to go, you're probably already on the God throne. And so the spiritual side of this is, okay, we are both going to take our secondary chair, not the throne, and we are going to defer to the throne, to God. And that's why it is so important, because it is the foundation for us handling all of the challenges. We don't know what is going to happen with illness and sickness and death in our marriage. But if we both know where we are grounded spiritually, all right, in our faith, we know how each other is going to approach things. We have a much better view of it.
And, and if you've been listening to Rock Solid Radio at all, you know that we believe in a story Jesus tells in Matthew chapter 7 about the wise and foolish builders. And so if you're preparing for marriage, we're asking you, what are you building your relationship on? Because in this story, in this parable that Jesus tells, there were two builders. One he called wise and one he called foolish. And the foolish one built his house on sand, and the wise one built his house on rock. And the metaphor of rock in the Bible all throughout is Jesus. Jesus is our cornerstone. Jesus is our rock. And so the foundation that we build off of. And so in both houses, there were storms, just like we talked about on the top of the show, whether it be bankruptcy, whether it be cancer, whether it be infidelity. And so that's the rock we've got to build our relationship off of. So if you're not making that a priority in your conversation or your relationship, you are building your relationship on sinking sand, and you're not prepared for a lifelong commitment to one another. You're not.
All right, so now we do want to help you. And so you're talking to two folks here, or you're listening to two folks that are in the ministry of Rock Solid Families. And so much of our work is done in the marriage world. But right now, what we want to talk a little bit about is our actual program. Okay, let's start just with Prepare, because we're talking about preparing people for marriage.
Yeah,
right?
So Prepare is like we said, an online assessment tool. You can actually go to prepareenrich.com, I think, or prepareenrich.org. I forget which one it is, but there's a website. It is an organization that we are licensed facilitators of. And so what we do is we go through that assessment tool. We send that to you. You fill that out before you ever come in the door. And then it's a package. It's $400 that you come, and there's 4 sessions involved in that. There's workbooks. There's that online assessment tool. And we walk you through those different categories that we just talked about. And you also kind of do an assessment where it kind of evaluates your strengths. Are you strong in communication? Are you strong in your spiritual beliefs? Are you strong in your family and friends? And so it really gives you a score. Okay, and it's not really a right or wrong. It's how you guys mesh together. That's the score. And it does identify your growth areas. And so that's a package we do in-house, $400. You can reach out to us at rocksolidfamilies.org if you're preparing for marriage and you'd be interested in that.
Let me make a statement from a man's perspective.
Yeah.
When we went through our premarital, it was a weekend.
Yeah, it was.
And I wasn't excited about it.
You were not.
Okay. As
you
many
and complain.
men, how long do we have to
It's
do
beautiful
this?
out. I don't want to do this.
Stupid. Okay. Let me tell you, that speaks to my ignorance and my immaturity and my selfishness. Okay. And I say that because we know now, because of the work that we do and the wisdom that has crept upon us through these years, if your partner says, I want nothing to do with premarital work, okay, that is a huge red flag. And you need to hear what I'm saying right now. If they're like, oh, that's stupid, that's ridiculous, even if they say it's too much money, like we always say, we help make people get through the money situation. We don't want money to be the issue. But if they go,
If it's one more excuse.
I don't want to do that. I don't think it's necessary. We already love each other. They are showing you a red flag right off the get-go. And so that might be an answer that helps you go, okay, maybe we don't need to go further with this. And so I don't, again, there are going to be people that always are outliers that win in their marriage that didn't really do well or even attend premarital. But I'm just telling you, one of the things that it takes to be married successfully is humility.
Yeah, and coachability.
Yes, and that okay, like I want to do the work.
Yeah.
I need to know more. And that's not a trait that we come by naturally, especially in today's culture. And so going through Prepare is a step in humility, of a humble heart to say, okay, what do I need to learn? I also say another thing, and I don't run into this too much because I think once we have our first session, we hit it off with the couple and stuff, and we usually have a good time going through all the sessions. But if a couple comes in and they have an attitude, or one of them has an attitude, like you can see it coming out of their pores. I don't want to be here. This is stupid. It needs to be called out.
Yeah.
Like, oh
And
my
I
gosh,
have.
this, yeah.
I have.
This, are you sure you two
I'm not
want
the
to
most
proceed? Because
popular person.
this person's not doing anything to help this.
And here's the deal. Again, when you put the cart before the horse and you're living together or you have children already, it's almost like, especially the guy, just going to say, usually is like, why bother?
Yeah.
We don't need to do this. And that attitude just really reeks for the woman because she's feeling like, I'm not important enough. I'm not worthy to fight and be here and work.
Right.
And it really is very scary for women who feel like, I'm putting in all this effort. You don't even care. And so sometimes it's their approach. I will say that. Sometimes they turn off the man. But guys, we're calling you out. If you're not willing to put the work in and invest in a relationship, then stop playing house. Stop living together. Stop having sex together. Stop having children together. If you're not willing to commit to that woman and say, I do. And that is what we're asking for, a commitment that is ready to last a lifetime.
Yeah. All right, so that's the Prepare part. Let's just say somebody's married, and so they've already built a house.
Or been married.
Or been married, so they maybe have divorced and now they're reconsidering. We like to use a different program that we created, and that's actually our Rock Solid Marriage program, which has a strong bit of the Prepare work. But because you've already had the marriage, we've also seen that maybe things weren't built very well, and that's why it is either struggled or maybe we've already ended in divorce and now we're trying to move into a new relationship. And so our Prepare program is all about that. I'm sorry. Our Rock Solid Marriage program is all about that. You want to go into the different packages?
Sure. So the highest level is called our Gold package, and it's $997. It is really that intense, and I shouldn't say intense because that sounds scary, but it has 5 one-on-one sessions. It has 10 videos that we have shot together that you would work through every week. It has a workbook that you would do homework every week. And we walk along with you. We hold your hand and we really become your coach in really creating that rock solid foundation for your marriage, for your relationship that you're maybe entering into marriage again with someone. And so we really, that rebuilding, that remodeling process, we want it to be successful. We want it to be long lasting. So that's our Gold package.
Yeah, it comes with its own workbook that we put together and everything. So it's an extensive but very thorough program. But again, it's a greater commitment. Also, it's a greater financial commitment.
Yeah.
So our next package down is because we're trying to accommodate, like we think this is so important, like we want to have different levels to be able to serve you. So the next one is the silver. And the silver is still the same program in terms of the type or the print that you're going to see. Again, it's still the same 10-week program. But in this one, you're going to only have 2 30-minute sessions, all right? And those can be throughout. They could be at the very beginning when we get started, or sometime through the center if there's a stumbling point, or at the very end. But obviously that's where the big drop in price comes from, because it just takes a lot more time for us to be one-on-one involved. And so you'll get 2 30 minutes, all right? You still get all of the videos, all right, those 10 videos that come each week that will kind of help guide you through the practices that we're asking you to do. And also, like, I don't know if we mentioned,
I didn't.
the all of these, we want to be able to extend like what we call an emergency call. We know that sometimes scabs get picked, meaning emotional scabs. All of a sudden, here you're trying to work through something, and it's part of the lesson, and there's a trigger, and the next thing you know, you're getting all tangled up on it, and you're at a little bit of a stalemate, or maybe a lot of emotion is flying. And listen, we don't want that to be the thing that sticks us in the progression of making this solid marriage. And so we have an emergency call. You will have our own personal numbers, our cell numbers, and say, hey, can we talk? We're having a struggle with this, and we will accommodate that.
Yeah, so that's for the gold and the silver package. And then the bronze package is literally $297, and it's self-paced. It involves the workbook, involves the videos. It doesn't involve any one-on-one coaching. So it's the material that you can walk through at your own pace. So those are just some packages that we have created to walk alongside either premarital couples, married couples, divorced couples that are maybe wanting to blend their families together. We know it takes effort. It is not going to just appear, right? It's not easy. And so, but it is so worth it to put the investment, to take the time, to make the energy, and to really make a marriage that is unshakable.
Yeah. It's the generational payoff, right? It
absolutely.
It's how you're going to build into the next generation. Remember, people built into you, and sometimes it was good, and sometimes it was poor.
Yeah, what
right?
was modeled, you're
and
right.
so, but now you are in a position to build the next generation. And so how are you going to build into them? And I think it's extremely important. Like, we are now having the opportunity to see our grandkids, and it's just as important for us to see them doing well as it was when we saw our own kids doing well. Like, we don't want to see our grandkids struggling with anxieties and stresses and not being parented well. Like, this has got to be something that's healthy all the way through.
And hon, you make that, it's such an important point. You may not have seen healthy modeled. A lot of our clients come in and say, I don't even know what healthy looks like. I didn't see a marriage that lasted. I didn't see a relationship that was successful. And so that's the problem, is that you have nothing to go on. You have nothing to build off of, a legacy that was so negative, so dysfunctional. So come get the help, come get the positive, healthy resources and tools to help create a new legacy, to change the cycle, to break the cycle of dysfunction. So we can help you do that.
All right. Very good. So this was all about the premarital work, and it's about the importance of the premarital work. So if there's anything, as Linda has said earlier, if there's anything that we can do to help, reach out to our office, go to our website. We will have all these packages listed on the website. Please give us a phone call, 812-576-7625. Have a conversation if that's what you need, just to kind of get some direction. So also, we just want to thank our sponsors again, Maxwell Construction and Casey's Outdoor Solutions. So just say hey to those guys and thank them for their continued support of the work that we do here.
Yeah.
Anything else?
Nope.
Miss Bride of 35 years.
Yeah. Hey, thank you so much for listening to Rock Solid Radio, building a stronger community, one family at a time. Go make it a great day.
Rock Solid Radio wants to thank Casey's Outdoor Solutions. Casey's is a premier garden center and gift shop located in Lawrenceburg, Indiana. They offer a wide selection of high-quality plants, landscaping materials, and home decor. They do amazing high-quality work and can help you transform your indoor and outdoor living spaces into something beautiful. So stop by Casey's Outdoor Solutions today and let them know you appreciate their support for Rock Solid Radio. Visit Casey's today at 21481 State Line Road, Lawrenceburg, Indiana.